My name is Ruben Caballero, and I'm a disabled artist. I've often have had various questions asked about how I work and how I do my artwork and paint. I'm going to attempt to answer some of those questions for you today. I hope that you enjoy this. When did I first realize that I had an artistic ability? I was just a kid. I was 8 years old in the 3rd grade, and I had just been diagnosed with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. When I would go out to recess, I was no longer able to participate. At that point in time, my teacher would hold me in the classroom and would give me a box of crayons and some paper, and I would draw for the duration of the recess time. With time, as time progressed, I guess what was the clincher was that my classmates would come in and they would react to what I had painted, what I had drawn, and that was perhaps the first indicator to me that I had artistic ability. What inspires me to paint? I guess I would have to say that it's God's creation. I wrote a poem a while back that talks about my inspiration, and it talks about God's hand reaching into his palette and stretching forth creativity, and the world being his canvas. So whenever I go out and see the trees, the colors, and the flowers, it just reminds me of that poem, and I think it really becomes an inspiration to me, whatever I see. So I'm not really limited as to what I paint. I kind of just look and feel out for inspiration. I usually paint something that has to do with past and present experiences that I've experienced. I try to tell a story with my paintings, so in hopes that maybe my story could reach somebody else's story, and when they see my paintings, it'll bring that out. I try to also, when I paint, I keep things on a positive note. With my paintings, I try to bring smiles to people, and I enjoy doing that, and that's where my inspiration comes from. What medium do I work in? I am an artist that will work. I've tried working in various mediums, but I prefer watercolor and pen and ink. I enjoy doing detail work, so when I compose something, I generally come up with an idea, and because I like detail, I reference photos a lot. And so if I'm going to use as a subject a tree, I will reference various trees depending on what I want, so that I can capture the detail. I also take about, I've often get asked how long do I take when I paint. Usually it varies depending on the painting itself and on the subject matter. But and if I'm doing pen and ink takes a long time because of the detail, and my pen and inks are extremely detailed. And but I would say anywhere from 30 hours to 50, 60 hours, depending on the subject matter. And that's how long it takes for me to finish a painting. What do I like painting? I paint a variety of subjects. I like painting buildings. I like painting wildlife. I like painting nature. I like painting the ocean. I do landscapes. So, but I prefer, when I paint, I like including vintage imagery in it. I, I'm drawn to that a lot, but I am not limited into to paint one subject or another. I kind of go with the inspiration. From time to time, I like to paint the retro imagery or include retro imagery in my paintings. This one, for example, has the advertising signs in kind of antiquish looking, and so I kind of like to include that. You can see on the gas pump that it's the same thing and has the old signs. On this one, you will see the same imagery of that retro look, but on this one I thought that I'd add color just to bring it out a little bit more, and so I also added the pen and ink in the back so that you could see the pen and ink and bring that out as well. This one has some more retro imagery and vintage in the truck and in the various signs, the water pump also, and then the radio flyer wagon. And this one is a watercolor, and this one I added children as well. Does my art contain any personal messages or experiences? I would have to say that I include children in my artwork from time to time, and the reason being is that when I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, I was about 8 years old, and shortly thereafter, as my condition worsened, I often, when we were with friends, and I'd have to sideline a lot of the activities, so I would just observe basically. And now as an adult, I try to incorporate some of these images in my paintings, and it just in a manner of speaking, it kind of puts my mind at ease to know that just to think about in terms of what would it have been like if I would have continued with my regular activity and not had been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. So from time to time, I like to insert kids in my paintings. I also need to mention that I worked for the school district for 16 years of my life, and I really enjoyed working the elementary at the elementary level, and I enjoy and I'm real fond of working with kids. So you'll see it's kind of a tribute to kids that I have and in my artwork, and I use frequently and from time to time, and you will see them pop up here and there in my art. What role does my wife play with my artwork? My wife is my #1 supporter. She helps me a great deal when I'm preparing for a show and the framing. She helps me with the mail outs whenever I have to mail out a certain art piece, and she helps me with the various setups in different places. If I have an a solo art show, she will be there to assist me and help me and at the reception and stuff. So she's been a great help, and she is a great help to me. Do people take note of my disability at art functions? For the most part, I think that people are curious, and some of them will take note, but for the most part, I think that they just go by and look at my art, and in many instances they'll think that my wife is the artist, and they'll begin to talk to her about certain pieces and how she did it and what was the inspiration behind that, and she just has to kind of bring their attention to me, and so that's a little humorous, but for the most part I think that I get a positive vibe from everybody in the art community. I don't see myself as being, I try not to be different when it comes to showing my art. I don't like to present myself as a disabled artist, but it is evident, and when that does happen and people do see me, then I pretty much just go with what it is, because I am a disabled artist. What are some of the obstacles that I have come across in putting out my art? With my disability, one of the things that is a big hindrance is that I have very limited motion. I have about a 6 to 8 inch span of reach, and my dexterity is not very good. So when I paint, I drop my pencil, my brushes frequently. A lot of stuff ends up on the floor. I have to paint with a lot of patience. But I have to manipulate the paper and turn it. Sometimes I do a complete, 360 with my paper, just in working with it. That's one of the reasons that I prefer, and I started with watercolor, because the paper allows me to be more flexible, and I can manipulate my canvas, where if I were to use oils, that's very, it doesn't allow for me to be able to reach, and so my motion then becomes even more limited. What are my accomplishments? In general, I can say that I've obtained an AA degree and a bachelor's degree in Spanish Latin American Studies. As far as the art world, I would have to say that I never have entered any jury shows, but I did enter one, and I have a first prize in that one. I've also done 3 art show solos, and I've showed at various art shows and art galleries with other artists or accompanying other artists. I'm not an established artist, but I feel that I'm just scratching the surface, and I'm looking forward to getting more involved in the future. Again, I'm Ruben Caballero, and I hope you enjoyed this question and answer session, and I hope I answered some of the questions that you have or you might have as it pertains to my artwork. You can find me on Facebook under Ruben Caballero, or on Instagram under Ruben's Artogram. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed it.